Hey guys, tonight we're going way, way back before pizza, before pillows, before plumbing. Imagine waking up in ancient Sumer in the cradle of civilization where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers shaped every muddy detail of your day. You're not a king or priest, just a regular villager. You smell like yesterday's goat stew, the ground squishes beneath your feet, and you're about to find out why ancient Mesopotamian life was less than Michelin-starred. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop your city and local time in the comments. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge slowly through soft muck, the riverbank kissing your toes with a thick slurp. The air is already hot, thick, even before the sun climbs properly, and your feet sink with each step, each toe curling instinctively against the clay-heavy soil. Somewhere in the distance, someone is yelling about a lost goat. Someone else is hammering reeds into a roof. You thought you're just trying to make it from the water back to your hut without slipping or stepping on a thorny date pit. The sandals you fashioned last week have started to peel. Honestly, they didn't stand a chance. You glance down at your feet, filthy, already blistering, and feel the day wrapping its arms around your shoulders like a damp wool blanket. Welcome to Sumer 3000 BCE. You won't be posting any breakfast selfies today. A sleepy ox cart lumbers past, its driver slouched under a wide-brimmed hat made of plaited reeds. It squeaks, groans, then halts as the driver hops down to untangle the axle from a clump of driftwood. You pause to watch, shading your eyes. The sun's not even angry yet, but give it an hour. You were up before dawn, jostled awake by the chorus of neighbors coughing, goats bleating, and one poor fellow practicing his flute again. The walls of your reed hut, woven with such care, don't block sound or much of anything, really. Through the lattice of your home you could see the pinkish sky turn gold, the buzzing of insects already beginning, the dust rising from the alleys as the town stirred to life. As you step back onto drier land, a small child runs past naked and giggling, chased by a dog that might have once been white. The child clutches a dripping fig, likely stolen from someone's altar offering. You don't ask. The smell of smoke drifts by morning fires. You glance toward the temples on the horizon, huge brick ziggurats stabbing at the sky like stairways to nowhere. They dominate the skyline here, not just spiritually either. Most of the city's effort goes into feeding, supplying, and appeasing the gods, or more accurately, the priests. You trudge along a dusty path, passing a woman squatting near a ditch, washing her baby in brown water. She smiles, you nod. Everyone's tired but polite. You duck past hanging fish crusted in salt and flies, and weave through a line of men already heading toward the fields, hose slung over shoulders, muttering about someone named Enlil who never shows up on time. You reach your own hut again, small, functional, a woven roof, sun-baked walls. You stoop to enter, brushing past the hanging herbs, some sweet, some alarmingly musty. Inside, your belongings are minimal, a pot cracked but still proud, a mat woven from reeds and now sagging where your hip always rests, a bowl with yesterday's lentil paste still crusted to its rim. You sit, take a breath. There's no real furniture here, and your knees complain as they fold under you. You look around, this is home. You squint up at the roof beams. One of them seems to be wiggling, another rat probably. You sigh. Outside, someone shouts a curse at the sky. It's going to be hot, very hot. There's no way around it, no miracle shade trees, no cold drinks waiting. Just your day ahead, sticky and slow. And let's talk about the humidity. You haven't known true discomfort until you've tried to sleep on a straw mat, soaked in your own sweat, dreaming of shade that never comes. Even your dreams feel muggy. The air clings to your skin like wet papyrus, and every breeze feels like someone blowing oven air into your face. Still you manage a faint smile, because today at least you're not hauling temple bricks. You're assigned kitchen duty for the barley beer vats. Lucky you. Historians still argue whether average Sumerians felt any joy in these daily routines, or if survival alone dulled their senses to the point of numbness. But here you are squinting toward the fields, listening to birds squabble in the trees, and wondering if that fig-thieving child's offering will offend the gods or just feed a squirrel. You sniff the air again. Something is definitely burning. Probably the neighbor's oven again. He insists on smoking meat inside a clay jar. One day he'll set the whole alley on fire. Still standing good. Let's see how breakfast treats you. You blink the sweat from your eyes as you duck back into your reed hut. The sun, now fully risen, blasts its golden fury across the muddy rooftops of Sumer. Outside, a chorus of coughing goats, clanging tools, and squawking birds competes with the gentle whoosh of river reeds rustling in the breeze. But inside your little hut the light is dim, and everything smells like warm grain. You're hungry, but not in a what should I eat today kind of way. More like what exists that I can safely chew and not immediately regret kind of way. And then you see it. Sitting right there on a low, chipped clay table is a bowl. A thick, slightly bubbling bowl of barley beer. But don't let the word beer mislead you. This isn't the fizzy, cold, hop-scented stuff you sip at a tavern. No, this is lukewarm porridge, thick, sour, slightly fizzy gruel with floating bits of crushed barley. It smells like someone left their bread out during a sandstorm, and then stepped on it, twice. Still, it's nutritious. It's how you start your day. So you shuffle over, take the long straw fashioned from hollow reeds, and slurp up a mouthful of the primordial smoothie. Your face puckers. Yep, that's the stuff. Vaguely bitter, vaguely sweet, definitely gritty. Some days you find a little barley husk stuck between your teeth until lunch, a little morning surprise. Why beer, you wonder? Well, water isn't always safe to drink. With all the runoff livestock and spiritual cleansing going on in the river, beer fermented mildly, alcoholic was safer. Even kids drink it. Even your grandma drinks it. Sometimes you think even the goats would prefer it. Historians still argue whether Sumerians thought of beer as a luxury, a medicine, or just a necessity. Some even claim it had religious significance, offerings to the gods, fuel for the priests, lubrication for ceremonies that involve way too much chanting and not enough sitting. But for you, it's just breakfast. A neighbor passes your door, belching loud enough to shake a clay pot off its shelf. "Morning," he calls. You grunt back and wipe your mouth with a rough linen scrap that once served as your cousin's loincloth. Recycling is sacred here. You poke around for something solid. Next to the beer bowl is a small clay dish with 2 hunks of bread, flat, dense, and baked so hard you could probably use one to shingle a roof. You gnaw at the corner. It tastes like hot dust. A little grainy, a little smoky, and a whole lot of effort. As you chew, slowly, carefully, you glance at the reed basket near the door. Inside are the leftovers from yesterday, a few onions, a chunk of dried fish, and a solitary fig that looks slightly judgmental. You think about saving it for later, but who are you kidding? You bite into it. Sweet? Almost too sweet. Your teeth ache a little. You think of how lucky you are to still have teeth. Your cousin the potter lost his last molar 2 seasons ago while biting into date cake. There's no sugar here, not like you know it now. Sweetness is rare and comes from fruit honey if you're lucky, or dates mashed into paste. Sometimes you'd trade half a sack of barley for a handful of raisins. That's just how things go. A small dog pads into your hut. No one owns it, not really. You call it Kish because it looks like the color of Kish's mud bricks. It sniffs at your heel, then at your bread. You flick a crumb its way. It snaps it up and immediately sneezes. You stretch, bones popping. It's already too hot to be standing, but there's no time to relax. Work starts soon and you need to scrub your face with something resembling soap. Which brings us to the next delightful part of your day, oral hygiene. You kneel next to a shallow bowl filled with river water and ash. In the corner, a bundle of frayed sticks bound in a braid of reeds waits patiently. You grab one and dip it in the water, then into a tiny pouch of white powder, crushed sheep bones, ash, a touch of salt. You begin brushing. It tastes like defeat. Your gums sting immediately, your tongue recoils, and you suddenly understand why everyone here talks with a tight-lipped grimace. But hey, it's either this or slowly rot your mouth out with bread grit. You've seen an elder try to chew with only 2 teeth. It's not pretty. Suddenly you hear the conch horn blow long and low from the ziggurat's tower. A signal. The day's labor begins. Somewhere far off, a priest begins his morning chant. You can almost hear him groaning the names of the gods like he's listing off a menu. Enlil, Inanna, Utu, Ninhursag, all probably hungry for offerings, and you haven't even finished breakfast. You chug the last of your barley beer, the grain settling in your throat like wet sand. You cough once, twice. Consider going back to bed. Remember, you don't have a bed. Kish follows you to the door but doesn't come out. Smart dog. The street is already bustling. You join the stream of workers trudging toward their daily assignments. The sun feels like it's laughing at you. In the distance, the brick quarries shimmer, promising a day of sweat, sunburn, and mild hallucinations. But that's tomorrow's misery. Today, you're off to carry mud. The path to the mud pits isn't far, but every step feels like a negotiation with the gods of heat and blisters. You squint ahead through the shimmering haze. A line of workers stretches like a ragged procession of ants toward the edge of the riverbank where yesterday's floodwaters have left behind thick, gloppy clay, prime temple repair material. Your feet slap against the cracked ground. With each stride, dust rises, clings, and settles in your sweat. You glance up briefly to see birds circling high above, scanning the fields for anything foolish enough to move. Your job today simple. Gather mud, slap it into wooden molds, bake it in the sun, and carry the resulting bricks half a mile to the temple site. Over and over for 10 hours. You reach the pit and sigh. There's a fresh pile of reeds stacked nearby for binding, and several large baskets wait to be filled. You're handed one without ceremony. It still smells like last week's fish guts. You don't ask. As you bend to scoop mud, your back protests. The clay is heavy and each scoop drips sluggishly. You press it into the mold, patting it smooth with calloused fingers. Somewhere behind you, someone sneezes into the crook of their elbow and keeps going. Hygiene isn't exactly a group project. Nearby, a man starts humming a song, something about a farmer, a goat, and a stolen loaf of bread. You don't know the words, but the tune sticks. It's the kind of music that sounds better the more dehydrated you are. Time slides sideways as the sun climbs. You can feel it seeping through your tunic, baking your shoulders, boiling your thoughts. The sweat trickles down your spine and into the waistband of your loincloth. You're one good heat stroke away from speaking in cuneiform. After what feels like an hour, someone finally shouts, "Shift!" You heave your basket onto your back. It sags and squelches. You begin the trudge toward the temple complex, your shadow sharp against the pale ground. Each step sends a jolt through your knees, your spine humming in protest. You pass by two boys wrestling over a broken tool and an old man sleeping upright under a reed-awning, mouth open like a sun-dried fish. As you walk, you pass a wall covered in ancient graffiti, little wedge marks carved into soft bricks before they hardened. Some are names, some are insults. One looks suspiciously like a goat. Historians still argue whether Sumerians had anything resembling street art, or if some kid just really hated goats. You reach the temple zone. An unfinished wall of ziggurat stairs yawns up toward the sky, its steps uneven and hot enough to roast lentils. You dump your basket into the designated pile, nod at the overseer, and turn back for another round. No one thanks you. No one ever does. You stop briefly under a withered fig tree and squint across the landscape. The city is a patchwork of mud brick walls, dusty alleyways, reed thatch roofs, and smoke curling up in lazy spirals. Somewhere to the east, you know the market is buzzing, women trading dried dates for firewood, scribes reading tablets aloud to illiterate listeners, a child weeping because someone stepped on her doll again. You wish you were there, or anywhere else. Your hands are now coated in sun-baked mud. You flex your fingers. The cracks sting, but you don't stop. You can't. There's always more to move, more to build. The temple must rise. The gods are watching, or at least the priests are. On your third trip back to the pit, you pass a small shrine built from broken bricks and smooth stones. Someone has left a crust of bread and a carved wooden bead as an offering. You consider the bread for a long moment, then you sigh and keep walking. Lunch isn't for another hour, and it's not what you'd call lunch exactly. As you bend again to scoop fresh mud, you feel something cold and squirmy brush your ankle. You freeze, slowly lift your leg. A small, very unhappy river eel flops out of the muck and wriggles away. You step back, trying not to scream like a startled toddler. You're not alone. Others glance over, one man chuckles, another shouts, "That's a good omen." You nod, pretending to agree, but silently vow to never touch eel stew again. The hours blur. You lose count of the bricks of the steps of the pitiful shade breaks. The sun is relentless, and your body moves like it's made of clay, too heavy, slow, but unwilling to stop. By the time the horn sounds again, your arms are jelly. Your back is toast, and your knees have filed a formal complaint with your ancestors. You drop your last load of bricks, wipe your face with the sleeve soaked in your own sweat, and lean against a cool wall of the temple in progress. For a moment it's bliss, shade, stillness, the scent of old incense lingering in the cracks. Then someone tosses a half-finished jug near your feet, and you remember you're still on duty. Time for lunch, but at least you're done with the mud. Today, you follow the others down a narrow alley, feet dragging, throat dry enough to scrape pottery. The sun's straight above now, like it's keeping tabs on who still hasn't collapsed. Your linen tunic clings in all the wrong places, sweaty, scratchy, and more dust than cloth at this point. But lunch is calling, or at least mumbling faintly in the distance. The gathering spot is a small shaded courtyard flanked by half-finished walls and lopsided columns. There's no table, no benches, just a patch of ground that looks slightly less filthy than the rest. You slump down next to a man named Dumuzi. He's always chewing something and never shares. Everyone pulls out their provisions. The smell is creative. You reach into your satchel, a limp sack made from reed cloth, and pull out your midday ration, 2 pieces of sand-filled flatbread, a sliver of dried onion, and half a boiled turnip that's definitely seen better days. You take a cautious bite of the bread. Crunch. Yep, that's sand all right. This is normal. In Sumer, bread isn't just a staple, it's a weapon. Or at least it feels like one, judging by the way it grinds down your molars. Historians still argue whether the Sumerians were aware that stone-ground flour often came with bonus grit, but your dental nerves don't care about scholarly debates. You try the turnip next. It's soft, maybe too soft. You sniff. It doesn't smell great, but then again, neither do you. You eat it anyway, chewing slowly and staring into the middle distance like a soldier on a bad campaign. Someone to your left sighs dramatically. You glance over. It's the bricklayer with the crooked nose. Same thing every day, he mutters. One day I'm going to eat something round, something juicy, like what you croak. He shrugs. Don't know, just round. You nod solemnly. Round food does sound revolutionary. A fly lands on your knee and stays there. You don't bother swatting it. It's too hot for conflict. Across the courtyard, a woman pulls out a leather pouch and begins sipping something thick through a straw. You recognize the scent. Barley beer again. But this one smells stronger than your morning brew. Probably double fermented. Your stomach flops a little at the idea. Kish shows up again, your honorary dog, and noses around for scraps. You toss him the onion peel. He sniffs it, then lies down with a groan like the rest of you. Hey, Dumuzi says, mouth full of something unidentifiable. Did you hear about Enkidu? You raise an eyebrow. The scribe's nephew. Yeah, he tried to sell snake meat as dried lamb at the market. You blink. Got caught. Priest made him recite all 600 lines of the hymn to Inanna as punishment. You wince. Harsh. He deserved it, says the crooked-nosed guy. That snake was green. You take another bite of bread, this time using your molars like you're chewing gravel, because you kind of are. After lunch, if you can call it that, you stand up slowly. Your back cracks like a brittle tablet. You stretch and the world spins slightly. The heat has thickened, pressing down like a wool blanket dipped in soup. You wonder if it's possible to melt while still technically being alive. Someone passes around a small clay cup of water. You sip cautiously. It tastes faintly of fish copper and regrets. Still it's wet. You pass it on. A boy jogs past, yelling something about a priest's goat being loose again. Everyone watches him disappear into the sun. Then, without any clear signal, the group begins to stir. Lunch is done. Sort of. You're not full, no one ever is, but you're also not entirely empty, which is about as good as it gets. As you gather your things, a shout echoes from the ziggurat wall. The foreman's voice, echoing through cupped hands, calls for the mud crew to return to hauling. You glance around. A few people groan. One man pretends to faint. No one buys it. But not you. Today you're lucky. You've been assigned to latrine duty. It sounds terrible, and it is, but at least it's in the shade. and there's a chance someone will forget a fig behind the reed partition. It's happened before. You live in hope. As you walk toward the temple's rear courtyard, carefully skirting the foul-smelling runoff channel, you catch the scent of something vaguely sweet. Could be fermenting dates. Could be a dead rat. Hard to tell. The latrine area is a narrow fenced-in section of alley behind the scribe's house. There's a trench, two leaning reed walls, and a stack of broken pots used for, well, you know. There's also a large jar of sand. You don't ask questions. Your job? Toss lime and ash into the trench. Clean out the pots and make sure nothing sentient is growing in the corners. Not glamorous, but at least you're not sweating in the brick pits anymore. You grab a long-handled ladle and start scooping the ash. The dust rises around you in slow gray swirls. A dragonfly buzzes past. The world narrows to the smell of heat, the sound of your own breathing, and the faint, distant mutter of a priest reading from a tablet. As you work, you notice something shiny, half buried near the fence. You reach down, pry it loose. It's a small, smooth bead, red clay glazed and chipped, probably once part of a necklace. You turn it over in your fingers. For a moment it feels like a treasure. Then someone sneezes loudly behind the fence and you remember exactly where you are. You sigh, toss another scoop of ash and keep working. Lunch is over. Back to it. By the time your shift at the latrines ends, your arms ache from scooping, and your nose has become so desensitized to the stench that you fear it may never work properly again. Still, you straighten up, stretch your back until it pops like brittle reeds, and step outside into the fresh air, which now smells merely like scorched dust and sweat. Progress. Your feet crunch across the packed earth as you head for the river. It's time to wash up. Or at least pretend to. There's no real soap, no fluffy towel, and certainly no spa. But the river, wide and slow-moving, is the closest thing you've got to a bath. You follow a winding trail down to the bank. The shoreline is crowded. Children splashing, women rinsing pots, a couple of farmers scrubbing their shins. You find a patch near a cluster of reeds and kneel down, water lapping at your hands. It's murky, brown, floating bits of grass-fish scales, and is that a sandal? You cup some water and splash your face. It feels like heaven, warm, algae-flavored heaven. You dip your arms, rub the ash from your elbows, and squint across the current. A water buffalo stares back from the opposite side. You both seem equally unimpressed. You take a handful of damp sand and rub it along your arms. It's the closest thing to exfoliation Sumer has to offer. It scratches a little too well, but the mud comes off, mostly. Beside you, a woman is scrubbing a fish clean with a palm frond. She looks at you and says flatly, "You have something on your nose." You wipe it. It's just more mud. Probably always was. You rinse again, cup more water in your hands, and swallow carefully. Technically, you're not supposed to drink river water, but sometimes thirst wins over protocol. You just try not to think about the upstream goat herd. Historians still argue whether Sumerians truly understood water contamination or simply avoided certain wells based on bad luck and bad smells. Either way, there's no Brita filter here. Just hope. You take a deep breath and lean back on your heels. A breeze-like uncertain shivers across the reeds. For the briefest second you're almost comfortable, then someone screams. You whip your head around just in time to see a child sprinting up the shore, a crab the size of your hand latched onto his foot. He kicks, stumbles, howls. Everyone watches. No one helps. It's not that they don't care, it's just that this is normal. Eventually the crab lets go. The child limps off, muttering about curses and revenge. You go back to your scrubbing. You finish up by rinsing your tunic, still on your body, of course. There's no changing room. You knead it with your hands until the water turns the color of stew. Then you stand sopping and let the sun do its thing. You head home by way of the back alleys, winding paths between huts that smell like fish and thatch and sour grain. You step over a chicken duck under a hanging sheet of drying reeds and avoid eye contact with the man arguing with a goat. Once inside your hut, you hang your tunic on a peg. It drips steadily onto the mat below. You sit down, careful not to crush the sleeping Kish, who has made a small nest out of your old sandals. You look around. Your bowl from breakfast still sits in the corner, crusted now with barley remnants. You pick it up, scrape out a soft hunk, and consider it your midday snack. Then you hear it, a commotion outside. You poke your head out and see a crowd gathering near the market stalls. Someone is shouting, someone else is laughing. You decide to investigate, mostly because the alternative is staring at your walls. The market is buzzing. Straw mats laid out with bits of cloth, cracked pots, dried herbs, beads, feathers. You wander, eyeing a lump of smoked fish that might actually be a frog. The vendor grins at you with a mouthful of suspicious confidence. You pass a scribe reading aloud from a clay tablet, his voice sharp and proud. By decree of the priesthood, a new tax shall be levied on barley and goat dung. The crowd groans. You blink. Goat dung. A woman beside you shrugs. It burns hotter than wood. Fair point. A boy with a string of snails approaches you. Trade? He asks, holding up his glistening necklace of slimy treasures. You pat your pockets. You have a dull bead, a crust of bread, and a slightly damp reed coin. You hand over the coin. He hands you the snail. It wiggles in your palm. You stare at it. He grins and runs off. Dinner? Perhaps. You wander back toward your hut, snail in hand, mentally preparing for the evening meal. Maybe if you pair it with dried onion and flatbread, you'll forget what it is. Or maybe not. Either way, you'll eat it. Because it's that or nothing. Back at your hut, you drop the snail into a chipped clay bowl and give it a firm look. It squirms slowly, unimpressed by your glare. You're not sure what you expected. Maybe it would faint out of courtesy. You grab a hot coal from the hearth and a bent sliver of bronze to prod it with. There's no recipe, no garlic butter, no sprig of parsley, just a vague hope that enough heat will turn this slime nugget into something vaguely chewable. The snail shrinks into its shell as the metal touches it. You sigh. Same you mutter under your breath. You set it aside to cool. You're not hungry enough yet to attempt consumption. Not quite. Instead, you head toward the pantry. Pantry being a generous term, it's really a dark corner of the hut with a few sealed jars, a hanging gourd, and one woven basket that smells like vinegar and feet. You uncap the nearest jar. A puff of warm, pickled air greets your nostrils. Inside, lentils soaking in what might be brine, might be regret. You fish one out and taste it. It's okay. Soft, salty, and better than most things you've eaten this week. You glance toward the hanging gourd. That one's risky. It contains fermented something, figs, goat's milk. A little of both. You sniff it. Immediately regret it. It's not ready. Or it's very ready and very wrong. You check the basket next. Inside is your hoard, 2 dates, 1 flatbread puck, and half a dried fish with its eyes still in. You've been saving this for a special occasion. Like famine. You close it gently. Not tonight. You open another jar, this one filled with old grain sealed in ash. That's a common trick. Keeps bugs out. Usually. But as you stir the grain, something small and many-legged scuttles across your hand. You don't scream. You're Sumerian. You just flick it away and pretend it never happened. Historians still debate whether insect contamination was just tolerated or if there were ways to detect it short of chewing, of course. Most agree if you could still eat it, it was edible. You lean back and survey your bounty. It's not bad, it's not good, it's food. In a world without salt, oil, sugar, or refrigeration, you make do. Your hut darkens slightly as the sun begins to lower. A soft breeze drifts in through the reed window. Outside, someone is arguing with a chicken. Again. You decide it's time to store what you can. The clay jars in your home are precious. Each one handmade, sun-baked, often sealed with mud or cloth plugs. You open one and drop in a handful of barley grains. Then you seal it with a waxy lump of hardened resin. Another jar contains water filtered technically through reeds and charcoal. That's supposed to help. You drink a mouthful and get a surprise chunk of something. Could be charcoal, could be beetle, could be both. You cough, then laugh, because what else can you do? You remember last week when your cousin found a scorpion curled at the bottom of her lentil jar. She screamed. The priest said it was an omen. The neighbor said it was dinner. Nobody won that argument. You move the jars to a shadowy corner, hoping the hut stays cool tonight. The walls, made of packed mud and straw, retain heat like a baked pot. At night, the inside turns from oven to sauna. A loud clatter outside startles you. You peek through the doorway. The neighbor's clay jar has shattered again. That's the third this month. He's shouting about his wife's careless elbow and how the gods are clearly punishing him. You sympathize. Clay jars are fragile. They chip, crack, burst from heat, or fall victim to slippery fingers. And they're not easy to replace. You have to trade for them grain, goat hair, fish guts, whatever you can spare. You remember when you tried making your own. It came out looking like a melted hat. Everyone laughed, including you. Eventually, you sweep the floor of your hut with a bundle of twigs tied with reed string. Dust swirls. A beetle scuttles. Kish yawns and rolls over. You glance at the door, twilight now. Shadows stretch long and thin across the courtyard. You sit. The snail you grilled earlier still rests in the bowl. It's cooled, hardened. You poke it. It doesn't move, which means it's finally safe to eat. You close your eyes, pop it in your mouth and chew. It's chewy, very chewy. Slightly earthy, a bit of shell. You swallow chase it with a mouthful of warm water and whisper victory. Then you lie back on your mat, staring at the ceiling. Another day. Another sequence of edible gambles. Outside you hear the soft whistle of the town crier. He's coming. You sit up, knees cracking. He always brings news proclamations, rumors, sometimes food laws. Once he yelled about cursed flour and everyone had to burn their bread. The street smelled like toast and doom for a week. Tonight his voice is sharp. Hear ye, temple tax on lentils raised by 2 handfuls. Repeat, 2 handfuls. Groans echo across the alley. Someone curses in Akkadian. You glance at your lentil jar. You close it. Silence returns. The crickets begin. The stars creep in, and dinner it's done. The stars flicker gently above your hut like curious eyes blinking down from the heavens, wondering what you'll manage to choke down tomorrow. You lie flat on your woven mat, hands behind your head stomach, making small, suspicious noises in response to the snail. Kish, your loyal sort of dog, lets out a soft snore near your feet. You stare up at the slats in the ceiling, noting a small spider making its nighttime commute. You're almost asleep when the sharp pang of thirst pulls you back. With a sigh, you sit up, grope for your water jar, and sip from it. It tastes warmer than your breath and faintly of the clay vessel itself, but it's wet and that's enough. You hear footsteps, heavy ones, unfamiliar. You freeze. A knock, no more like a tap-tap on the reed frame of your door. You shuffle over, push aside the flap, and squint into the night. It's one of the priest's apprentices, barely old enough to have a beard, but already wearing the smug confidence of someone who gets to eat salted fish. He holds out a scroll, well, a clay tablet. Heavy, of course. For you, he says, then turns on his heel and vanishes into the dark like a smug-scented ghost. You stare down at the tablet. It's an official summon. You've been invited to assist with the temple granary tomorrow. You groan loudly, because this means, yes, another inspection day. You'll be helping count weigh sniff and sort jars of barley, sacks of lentils, and occasionally sniff goat hides to determine if they're still spiritually acceptable. You toss the tablet onto your mat and lie down again, exhaling through your nose like a dying bull. At least it's different from carrying bricks. Somewhere in the dark a cat yowls. Somewhere else a lute begins to play softly off-key as always. You sleep. Morning again. This time no flies on your face. Just a loud thump from the neighbor's hut as something breaks. Probably another jar. You stretch, yawn, and scratch at your shoulder where the mat left an itchy impression. You're alive. Barely. Time to work. You don your tunic, now dry and somehow even stiffer than yesterday, and step outside into the golden haze of dawn. The air is sticky again. A mist of river fog clings to everything, making your hair curl at the edges and your patience fray. You grab a crust of bread on the way out, chew it for 5 minutes, and finally give up stuffing it into a pouch for emergencies. The temple complex looms like a tired beast in the distance. You approach the granary, the large circular building with its domed roof and ornate carvings of barley stalks, moons, and very smug gods. The foreman greets you with a grunt and hands you a list. You can't read it, but you nod anyway. The first jar you open smells fine, dusty, earthy, dry. The second sour, suspiciously warm. You raise your eyebrow and the scribe nearby nods. Record that one as tainted by heat spirits. Right? You sniff another. Barley good, lentils better. A handful of dry peas roll across the floor and someone curses. You sweep them up and add them back into the jar. No one saw. Then comes the fun part, shooing away the rats. Yes, rats, big ones. They love granaries, and today they've nested behind a stack of cracked pots. You knock gently. One rat darts out, then another, then 6. One pauses to glare at you before disappearing into a hole. You consider applauding its audacity. Historians still argue whether the Sumerians intentionally coexisted with granary rats, seeing them as part of the ecosystem, or if they just gave up fighting them. Based on your experience, it's more the latter. You set a trap, a shallow bowl with old cheese and a stone propped above. It's crude, it rarely works. But it makes the priests feel like you're managing the problem. You move on to the grain weighing, 1 jar at a time. You lift, you pour, you balance, you spill, you scoop. Your arms shake by the 3rd round. The scribe yawns. The air inside the granary is dense and musty. Someone opens a vent flap and sunlight pours in like a divine slap. By midday your tunic is soaked again. You've sorted 13 jars, sniffed 7 sacks, fought off 2 rats, and inhaled enough barley dust to feel it behind your eyes. You pause for lunch, this time provided by the temple. A wooden bowl of thick lentil mash topped with, miracle of miracles, dried fig slices. You blink. Flavor. You savor each bite. It's warm, salty, just soft enough to swallow without chewing too much. Someone even sprinkled crushed dates on top. You consider crying but don't want to draw attention. Kish, who followed you here, whines from outside. You sneak him a slice of fig and pretend not to hear the scribe scold you. Back to work. The rest of the day blurs into a pattern of smells, scoops, and startled yelps. You find a beetle the size of your thumb inside a jar. The scribe labels it unfit for divine use. You suggest giving it to the tax collector. By the time the horn sounds for end of day, your nose is numb, your arms are jelly, and you're humming that same farmer and goat song from the brick pit. You trudge home under a peach-colored sky, barley husks clinging to your hair, thinking only of one thing. Dinner. Dinner. The word glows faintly in your mind like a temple lantern in the fog. You reach your hut as the sun slides behind the rooftops and the sky turns the color of old figs. The day's heat clings to the walls like a ghost that won't leave. Kish trots in behind you, tail wagging weakly, then collapses on the floor with the dramatics of a seasoned actor. You squat beside your stash, eyeing your options. A single onion slightly wilted. Half a flatbread now harder than the temple steps. A scoop of barley mush from 2 days ago still clinging to the inside of a pot like it's afraid to let go. And then you remember the lentil mash. You reach into your pouch and pull out the leftover temple serving carefully tied inside a scrap of linen. It's warm, maybe too warm, but still smells faintly of spice, actual spice. Someone must have snuck in a pinch of dried sumac. You're tempted to propose marriage on the spot to whoever made it. You spread the mash onto the bread and bite, and ignoring the risk to your molars. It's edible. The lentils carry most of the flavor. The bread just crunches in protest. You chase it with water that tastes like it sat in the sun for 6 hours, which it did. A neighbor's voice floats through the thin reed walls. You hear the priest wants more barley this month. Another grumbles he always wants more barley. You chew slowly, trying not to imagine your dinner being forcibly volunteered for divine tribute. As you finish your modest meal, a soft knock raps against your door. You shuffle over and peek out. It's your neighbor Enlil, not the god, just a man with unfortunate naming. He cradles a woven tray containing 2 small bowls. Wife made snail stew, he says. There's extra. You blink. Extra? He shrugs. She found a cluster behind the latrine. You hesitate, then accept, because frankly your standards have plummeted. Back inside, you and Kish huddle around the offering. You dip your fingers in. The stew is thick, oily, with crushed nuts and flavored with what might be riverweed. You close your eyes and take a bite. It's surprisingly okay. You break off bits of flatbread and scoop it up, alternating bites with the barley mush. Kish gets a few scraps. He licks the bowl clean and sighs contentedly. You lean back, belly fuller than usual. The room smells like warmth and nut oil and faintly of dog. You don't even mind. Outside, the night sounds begin. Crickets distant chatter the splash of something falling into the river. A baby crying, a lute being tuned badly, and the town crier clearing his throat somewhere near the ziggurat. His voice pierces the quiet. Attention all citizens, grain inspection tomorrow. Be prepared to present storage pots by sunrise. Groans echo across the alleys. You glance at your stash and silently calculate how many jars might pass for full if you pad them with dry reeds. Then the crier adds, "Also the priest's goat has been found. Stop leaving figs as bribes. He is a goat." You grin. Historians still argue whether town criers had official scripts or if they occasionally went rogue. Judging by that announcement, you're leaning toward rogue. You set your bowls aside and lie down, arms crossed behind your head. Kish curls up beside you. You shift to get comfortable, find the one soft spot on your mat, and let the weariness of the day settle into your bones. But sleep doesn't come easily because now it's mosquito time. They arrive like tiny assassins, silent, sharp, insistent. You slap at the air, miss, slap again, another bite. You pull the reed flap over your face. It helps, slightly. This is the part of the day where your thoughts wander. You imagine what it would be like to live like a noble, access to dates, cool rooms, a private well. Maybe even a blanket, maybe. You picture a feast, honey-glazed figs, grilled goat bowls of fresh grapes. Cheese that doesn't smell like sorrow. Bread you don't need a hammer to eat. Then you laugh softly, because even nobles still use the same latrines. Outside the stars burn brighter now. The moon peeks through the clouds. The wind picks up just enough to cool the air, just enough to make the mosquitoes reconsider their dinner plans. You breathe deeply. The stew settles in your belly. Kish snores. You close your eyes, and just before you drift off you think, please no dreams about lentils. You wake up before dawn again as always. There's no such thing as sleeping in when the ziggurat horn controls your life. Outside the world is still more shadow than shape. The air is cool, but only because the sun hasn't yet remembered to torture you. For now you breathe in the silence broken only by the distant bleat of a sheep and the occasional snore from the neighbor's hut. You roll onto your side. Kish grunts softly and adjusts himself against your shin like a living hot rock. You stretch and every joint complains in its own language. Today is grain inspection day. You groan and sit up, rubbing sleep from your eyes with a palm full of yesterday's dust. You shuffle to the corner and inspect your stash. 3 jars, maybe 4, could pass for full if no one looks too hard. 1 is padded with straw. 1 is mostly empty, but sealed with an omen bead on the lid, which you're hoping will serve as a distraction. You dust the tops. You hum a little chant to yourself. It's not religious. It's just a tune that makes scooping lentils feel less depressing. Outside you hear the thump-thump of clay sandals. The inspectors are starting their rounds. You pull your tunic over your head, cold and damp as usual, and step out into the early gray morning. A line of villagers has already formed near the temple wall. Everyone's carrying something, jars, baskets, bowls, sealed with waxcloth. You join the queue, barley jar in hand, and shuffle forward. The man in front of you, a weaver named Talu, leans over and whispers, "You hear about the rat in the priest's offering bowl." You raise an eyebrow. He says it's a test from the gods. I say it's a test of kitchen hygiene. You chuckle. It's too early to laugh, but you do anyway. When your turn comes, you step up to the inspection mat. A junior priest with very clean fingernails frowns at your jar. He taps it. He sniffs it. He removes the lid and peers inside like he expects to find secrets. You hold your breath. After a moment he grunts and writes something on a tablet, probably barely acceptable. You'll take it. You return home, heart racing a little less now. Kish greets you by yawning dramatically. You give him a barley husk as a reward. He does not look thrilled. Back inside your hut, you take stock. It's still early. Breakfast must be faced. You tear off a bit of old flatbread and chew. It's like gnawing on a roof tile. You soften it with a little warm water. Still roof tile, but now with moisture. You consider heating the barley mash from last night, but you're out of dry dung to fuel the fire. Your neighbor might trade, but it'll cost you a fig. You sigh. Outside, a rooster crows. Not your rooster. Nobody knows whose rooster it is. It just shows up, screams, and leaves. Some say it belongs to the gods. Others say it belongs in a stew. You gather your things for the day's work, not temple, not brick pit, but something different. You've been assigned pest control, which sounds official but really means you're hunting rats, specifically rats in the southern granary, the ones too smart for traps and too fat to ignore. You're handed a stick, a handful of ash, and a small clay whistle meant to confuse them. It confuses you more than anything. You and two others crawl into the storage hall, low ceiling, no light, the smell of moldy grain. You clap your hands, blow the whistle, and try to look threatening. Nothing happens, then scurrying. You chase a blur through the shadows, swinging your stick wildly and shouting things like, "Back to the underworld, beast." It's not elegant, but it's tradition. One of your companions trips and falls into a sack of lentils. The rat escapes. Everyone curses. You wipe sweat from your brow. You've been at it an hour and caught exactly one rat who promptly bit you and fled. Pest control 0 rat 7. You sit outside for a break, sucking your sore finger and watching the clouds drift lazily over the ziggurat. A passing scribe hands you a clay tablet by mistake. It's in Sumerian cuneiform and seems to be a list of goat sacrifices. You consider returning it. Then you don't. Historians still debate whether pest management was an actual job in Sumer or just an unlucky rotation. Based on your current assignment and complete lack of training, you're leaning toward the latter. Eventually you finish your shift, sweaty, rat-bitten, covered in grain dust, and return home. You wash your hands in a bowl of slightly cleaner water and inspect your bite. It's already swelling. You shrug. It's not the worst thing you've eaten today. Dinner is a single baked onion wrapped in leaves and left in the fire pit. You unwrap it like a gift. It's soft, smoky, and vaguely sweet. You devour it in 5 bites. You're licking your fingers when a trumpet blows, a different trumpet. You freeze. This one means mandatory gathering. You wipe your hands, dust off your knees, and shuffle toward the temple square with everyone else. A new proclamation, you assume. Probably another food law. You stand among the crowd, Kish circling your legs, and watch as the high priest steps up to the platform. He clears his throat dramatically. By divine instruction, he bellows, "There shall be a new festival in honor of Ninkasi, goddess of beer," the crowd murmurs. "There will be competitions, dancing, and of course tasting." A cheer rises. You blink. Tasting tomorrow, your stomach growls. You whisper to yourself, "I could use a win." You wake up the next morning to the sound of drums. Not the dull wake-up and work drums. No, these have rhythm. These have bounce. These drums mean something's happening. And as your brain stitches itself together from dreams of lentil cakes and rats in hats, the word floats gently to the top festival. You sit up slowly, rubbing your eyes, and immediately hear shouting in the distance, excited, chaotic shouting. Someone's yelling about borrowed tunics. Someone else is trying to herd a goat that clearly wants nothing to do with religion. Kish perks his ears and darts outside like he's just remembered what joy is. You follow. Outside, the square is already filling with people. Banners, reed mats dyed with river clay, and crushed berries hang limply from poles. Children streak past, faces smeared with early sweets, hair already tangled. Women adjust garlands of reeds and flowers on their heads while men argue about who gets to carry the official tasting ladle. You haven't seen this much life in months, because today is the festival of Ninkasi, goddess of beer, fermentation, and probably hangovers. And it's your favorite kind of day, one that involves free samples. You shuffle toward the center of town, drawn by the scent of warm barley mash and something that might be honey. A series of clay vats have been lined up under a reed canopy. Each one bubbles softly, each one guarded by a stern-looking brewer with a ladle and a very firm no-second tasting policy. You approach the first vat, nod politely, and hold out your bowl. A scoop is poured. It sloshes thickly like porridge that gave up. You sip. It's, not bad. Slightly sweet, slightly sour, very warm. You feel your shoulders relax. First batch, the brewer says proudly, left to ferment 4 moons. You nod as if you know what that means, then move on to the next one. Every brewer claims theirs is best. Some add dates, some herbs. One guy insists his is blessed by the goddess herself. You're not convinced, but you keep tasting. By the 4th vat, you're smiling. By the 6th, you're laughing at things that aren't jokes. And by the 8th, you're certain your tunic is too tight, because the gods are testing you. Around you the energy builds. Drummers gather in a circle, their hands thumping rhythmically. Dancers begin to move slowly at first, then with more daring, you clap along, half in time, half just trying not to spill. Historians still argue whether the festival of Ninkasi was a structured religious rite or a glorified excuse for the city to collectively lose its sense of restraint. Either way, it's the happiest you've seen anyone in weeks. Suddenly a voice bellows, "Tasting contest." The crowd parts. A large man with a chest like a storage jar and a grin carved from joy announces the rules. Whoever drinks from all 10 vats without falling down wins a clay token, a woven sash, and the title of Blessed of Ninkasi. You blink, you look down at your half-full bowl, you look back at the vats. You don't stand a chance, but your neighbor Enlil does. He pushes forward, chest out, already bragging about his iron stomach and divine lineage. He downs the first bowl, then the second. By the 4th, he's dancing between sips. By the 7th, he's speaking to the vats directly. He collapses at the 9th, proclaiming his love for a goat that isn't present. The crowd cheers anyway. You help carry him to the shade where Kish is already lying belly up, possibly drunk on spilled barley foam. As the sun climbs, the festival shifts. A line forms at a stand serving something called crushed fruit surprise. The surprise is that it's mostly squash. You get a serving anyway. It's tart, cold, and served on a flat reed tray. You eat it with your fingers, savoring each bite as if you've never tasted fruit before. Honestly, you barely remember the last time you did. A woman beside you offers a strip of dried meat, chewy, salty, rich. You offer her a half-date in return. The exchange feels sacred. Then the high priest arrives, carried on a litter by 4 extremely bored-looking young men. He stands at the center of the square, raises both hands, and proclaims, "Let Ninkasi know we are grateful." Everyone raises their bowls. "Let her see our joy." People cheer. "Let her forgive the rat in the offering bowl." Everyone laughs. You drink. It's warm, but you don't care. The priest begins to chant verses in old Sumerian, rhythmic and hypnotic. It's about fermentation, about the sacred role of barley, about divine bubbles and ritual froth. You hum along despite not knowing the words. The sun begins to dip. As shadows stretch across the square, people begin to dance again, slower, now looser. Some lean against each other, some lie down and hum softly to themselves. You find a quiet spot near the temple wall. Sit down and let the last light wash over your face. Kish joins you, licking something off his paw with the air of a professional critic. You sip the last of your barley beer and sigh. For once, you're full. You're not sweating. You're not thinking about lentils or rats or the next tax announcement. You're just here. And it's enough. The morning after the festival of Ninkasi hits harder than a brick dropped from the top of a ziggurat. You wake up to the distinct feeling that your mouth has been paved with sun-baked mud. Your tongue sticks to the roof of your mouth like half-dried barley paste. You sit up slowly, too quickly actually, and immediately regret it as your head pulses like someone is chanting inside your skull. Kish, traitor that he is, seems completely unaffected. He's already awake, chewing contentedly on a reed sandal. Yours, naturally. You look around. There are strangers asleep in your courtyard. One of them is hugging an empty grain basket. Another has half a fig stuck to his cheek. You decide not to ask. You stagger outside into the pale morning light. The sun isn't even mean yet, but it's trying. Your neighbors look like they've all been slowly air-dried overnight. A woman groans as she tries to pour water from a jar that turns out to be empty. Someone else is muttering softly to a chicken. You splash some water on your face, lukewarm, possibly shared by 3 other people already, and take a few sips from the bowl. It's gritty. You drink it anyway. Then comes the sound you've been dreading, the sharp crack of a staff on stone. The priest's assistant is doing his rounds, barking out the day's assignments with the enthusiasm of a bored torturer. You're listed for cleanup duty, of course. You trudge back to the temple square, where the evidence of celebration lies in soggy piles, broken bowls, overturned vats, wilted garlands, someone's sandal stuck to the side of a barrel. It's your job to sort the salvageable from the compostable. You start by gathering the reed mats, now damp and thoroughly trampled. Some can be dried and reused. Others, well, you don't want to speculate what that smell is. A young girl is tasked with scraping spilled barley mash off the flagstones with a shell. You offer to trade jobs. She declines with the cold efficiency of someone who knows a bad deal when she hears one. As you haul the last broken vat to the refuse pit, your stomach reminds you that barley beer does not in fact count as a balanced diet. You grab a small chunk of leftover flatbread from a nearby offering plate. It's a bit soggy and slightly scented with incense, but it's bread. You chew slowly, crunchy, gummy, somehow both. You decide it's best not to think about it. Historians still debate the boundaries between sacred offerings and post-festival leftovers. You, however, have firmly decided that food left unattended more than 12 hours is fair game. A little before midday, the high priest himself passes by, carried in a shaded litter. He doesn't walk if he can help it. He peers down at the mess, wrinkles his nose, and waves a hand as if blessing the cleanup. You resist the urge to bless him back with something verbal. After the last mat is shaken out and the final garland tossed into the ash heap, you're finally dismissed. You stagger home, arms coated in flour pulp and barley sludge, and collapse onto your mat. Kish noses a cracked bowl toward you. Inside is a small piece of dried fish forgotten during the festival. You look at him. He looks at you. You split it. Later in the afternoon, as the sun starts to climb down the side of the sky, you muster the energy to visit the riverside. Not for washing, though you probably should, but for gossip. Everyone gathers there after big festivals. The mood is always part celebration, part investigation, and part recovery. You settle onto a flat stone near the water and listen. I heard the brewer from Vat 5 used honey from a forbidden grove. Forbidden or just far away, same difference. I saw Enlil propose to a shrine. He got rejected. Laughter, coughs, one hiccup. Someone passes around a small pouch of roasted barley. You take a few kernels, chew thoughtfully. They're smoky, slightly bitter, and weirdly satisfying. Then the conversation shifts. Did you hear what happened to the tax collector's grain? You tilt your head. Gone. All of it. Vanished. Just poof. Stolen spirits. Obviously. Historians still argue whether theft was attributed more to economic desperation or divine mischief. In practice, it depends who's asking and who's missing barley. You chew your roasted kernels a little more slowly now. Because your own stash, it's not exactly Fort Knox. You stroll back home before nightfall, keeping an eye on the shadows, not for thieves, for inspectors. Because after a festival there's always a reckoning. Back in your hut you check your jars. Still sealed, still boring. You take comfort in the predictability of lentils. Dinner is simple tonight. A mix of yesterday's barley mashed with a soft fig and warmed in your hands. Not elegant, but easy on the stomach. You eat slowly, watching the sky darken. A soft breeze drifts in through the doorway, tugging gently at the reeds. Quiche sighs, head resting on your foot. You close your eyes, and somewhere between the thrum of distant drums and the gentle croak of a frog near the riverbank, your mind floats toward sleep. The next morning you wake to silence, which is suspicious. In a city like this, brick-lined, reed-roofed, always alive, Sumer silence is unnatural. You sit up slowly, rubbing your neck, and wait for the usual sounds: the rooster's war cry, the groan of sandals, unpacked dirt, someone yelling about a missing goat. Nothing. You peek outside. The sky's still dim, sun not yet over the rooftops. A few figures shuffle through the morning haze, hunched and quiet. Something's off. Then you remember. Inspection Day Part 2. The priests are checking household storage this time, not the big temple vats, not the public granaries, your personal jars. You scramble back inside and look at your stash. One jar sealed tight. Good. One slightly moldy. One half filled with grain, and was that a beetle leg? You poke it. It vanishes. You sigh. The thing is, you don't really own this food. It's yours in name, but if the temple declares it needed for divine redistribution, well, there goes your dinner. Again. You unseal the good jar and stir the grain. It smells fine. You top it off with a few fistfuls from your emergency pouch. It makes a small mound, satisfying. You smear a line of ash around the lip, makes it look older, like it's been sealed longer. You pat the lid down and whisper a small prayer, not to the gods, but to the inspector's mood. A knock on your reed door. You open it to find two assistants, one carrying a writing tablet, the other already holding his nose like he expects a horror show. They step inside and glance around. "Storage inspection," the taller one says. You gesture toward the corner. They move. The short one sniffs a jar, raises an eyebrow, dips a reed spoon in, tastes a kernel, chews, nods. The tall one peers into your omen bead jar, the one that's more optimism than food. He frowns, pokes at it, then turns to his colleague. "Possible spoilage." "Marked," says the other, scratching a symbol on the tablet. You suppress a groan. That means they'll return tomorrow, possibly with a priest, possibly with a suggestion that you donate the remaining contents for ritual cleansing. They leave without further comment. You wait until they're well out of earshot before muttering, "Cleanse this." Kish sneezes approvingly. You reseal the jars and step outside, stomach already starting to whisper about breakfast. There's still a bit of barley mash left from yesterday, cold, stiff, slightly fermented. You eat it anyway, chewing with the enthusiasm of wet parchment. Then comes the clatter of a pot across the street. You look over. Your neighbor, the one with the nervous goat and the tendency to overcook everything, is hauling a basket full of charcoal bricks. That gets your attention. Charcoal is valuable, scarce, and most importantly traded. You wander over, hands behind your back, trying to look casual. "New haul." He nods. "From my cousin near the hills. Fresh kiln batch." You whistle. "Any left to trade?" He squints. "Depends. You got anything sweet, you think? Your last fig was 3 days ago, but you do have a small pouch of crushed dates you were saving for an emergency. Is this an emergency?" "Yes. Fire means warm food. Warm food means slightly less soul erosion." You nod. 1 pouch, half hand. He considers. "Done." You make the exchange. He hands you 3 charcoal bricks, still dusty and sharp-smelling. You cradle them like treasure. Back home, you set one carefully into your tiny hearth. You strike a flint. Once, twice, a spark. Then a soft hiss. Then warmth. The hearth glows gently. You lean over it and smile. This is the good part of the day. You grab a clay pot, scrape in some barley, a chopped onion, and the remains of a snail, no judgment, and set it over the flame. The scent rises, savory, smoky, vaguely hopeful. Historians still debate how complex Sumerian recipes really were. Some claim hundreds of combinations. Others say it was mostly stew until edible. You lean toward the latter. With enough smoke, everything tastes ancient. As your breakfast cooks, you sit beside the hearth, warming your hands, watching Kish snore next to the wall. You stir the pot with a stick. Taste too bland. You add a pinch of crushed herbs from a pouch you traded 2 weeks ago. Unknown leaves, but they smell nice. Taste again. Better. Finally, you eat. It's not fancy. It's not sacred. But it's hot. And after days of cold mush, hot counts for everything. After breakfast, you rinse the pot in your corner wash bowl and step back outside. The city is waking now. Children chasing chickens. Merchants setting up reed mats. A scribe loudly practicing his numerals with a clay tablet and very little grace. You stroll toward the temple market, not to buy, not today, just to wander, to watch. There's a stall selling clay amulets shaped like barley stalks, blessings for a good harvest. Another with smoke-dried fish hung like garlands. A woman chants the price of her onions in a rhythmic beat, hoping the music will loosen someone's purse strings. You stop at a display of flavored beer cakes, thick discs of mashed barley baked with dates and fennel seeds. You sniff. Sweet, sticky, pricey. You ask the vendor for a taste. He squints. "What do you have?" You dig into your pouch. Pull out a bead, faded, chipped, probably from a child's necklace. He eyes it, nods. "Half cake." You accept. He breaks it in 2 hands you the larger piece. You chew slowly, soft, sweet. Just enough date to feel rich. You close your eyes and let it melt. Kish circles your legs, hoping for crumbs. You give him none. This one's yours. You head home with crumbs on your chin and a faint buzz of sugar in your blood, real sugar from real dates, and it's making your head spin in a way that's oddly luxurious. As you pass the familiar reed huts and mud brick walls of your neighborhood, everything seems just a bit brighter. Or maybe it's the sugar crash starting early. Your feet kick up small clouds of dust as you pass the neighbor's broken jar, still there, still sad. You make a mental note to avoid that corner. Shards are bad luck. Back at your hut, Kish is busy attempting to dig through a reed mat. You watch him paw at it like treasure is hidden underneath. There isn't. You checked. Twice. You step inside. The smell of charcoal from earlier still lingers. It makes the space feel warm, less like a storage bin and more like a place someone might live. You stretch, crack your neck, and consider your tasks for the day, and that's when you hear it. The flute. Not just any flute. That flute. The one played by your neighbor's son who thinks he's been chosen by Enki to restore music to its former glory. He's wrong. The notes waft in through your reed walls like a swarm of drunken bees. They rise, fall, and stumble somewhere between pitches. Kish buries his head under a mat. You try to ignore it. You start sorting grain instead, one jar at a time. The grain is dusty but whole, though every fifth scoop seems to contain a rock or a small beetle doing laps. You sigh and keep going. This is preparation day. Tomorrow is the market, which means today is cleaning, weighing, sorting, and desperately hoping you can trade enough lentils for anything with taste. You pour your grain onto a wide flat tray, spread it with your hands, and pick through it. Stone, beetle, strange black seed you don't recognize. You flick them all aside. You remember last season when a woman tried to pass off chickpeas as baby dates. You admire the creativity. You also remember the look on the man's face when he bit into one expecting sweetness. You finish sorting, then wrap your usable grain in cloth pouches, tying them with twisted reed cord. You press them flat, stack them, and step back. 3 bundles, that's your trade offering. Historians still debate the social role of small-scale barter in Sumer. Was it informal community exchange or structured marketplace economy? For you it's survival, and maybe, just maybe, a small piece of dried fruit. You prepare your carry basket, wiping it with an oily cloth to keep it from fraying. You wrap your pouches and tuck them inside. Then you check your appearance. Your tunic is, serviceable. It has a hole near the hem and a suspicious stain on the shoulder. You try to pat the stain out. It spreads. You sigh, but there's no time to fix it. You've heard the best fish show up early, and if you're stuck with the midday offerings, you're going to be chewing scales for a week. You rest for a bit, sipping the last of your water. It tastes faintly like yesterday's stew. You try not to mind. Afternoon comes, and with it a soft knock at the door. It's Talu, the weaver's son. He carries a bundle of fibers and a sheepish smile. You still trade pottery glaze. You blink. You do well, you did. You have a pouch of dried glaze powder you found 2 weeks ago. Ugly blue-green. But it sticks to pots like magic and fetches decent grain in return. You nod. He holds up a swatch of fabric-dyed reed fiber cloth, soft to the touch. "This for your sister's wedding robe," he says. "You trade me the glaze, you think. The glaze could be a good barter chip tomorrow, but the cloth is rare, rich in color, and your sister would cry happy tears for weeks." You agree. He beams. "Blessings of Inanna on your hut," he says. You shrug. "Just don't tell anyone it was me who gave it up." You stash the cloth carefully folded, protected, and feel for a moment like a proper adult. You make a quick supper of reheated barley mash stirred with a pinch of dry onion and the tiniest splash of fig syrup. It's more aroma than taste, but it does the trick. Kish licks the pot when you're done. You lie down as dusk settles, thinking of the market. You dream of honeycomb. You've only had it once at a feast years ago when a visiting trader from the highlands brought a slab the size of a roof tile. The sweetness made your head spin. The wax stuck to your teeth for hours. You remember every bite. Tomorrow, maybe. If your grain fetches well, if the fish seller is generous, if the beetles stay out of your pouches. The stars blink above, Kish curls beside you, and the flute mercifully stops. The sun isn't even up when the market drums begin. A deep, rhythmic thum-thum echoing off the ziggurat walls like the city's heartbeat stirring from sleep. You groan softly, roll onto your side, and stare at the roof of your hut where a tiny lizard does push-ups like it's training for battle. Kish stirs at your feet and thumps his tail against the mat, ready for anything that smells remotely like grilled fish. You sit up, run a hand over your hair, and remember today is market day. You open the reed shutter and peer outside. Already the street is alive with motion merchants hauling carts, children chasing dropped onions, a man shouting the price of unshaped clay like it's gold. You duck back and grab your trade basket, 3 bundles of sorted grain wrapped tight, and tuck it under your arm. You step outside into the warm breath of morning. The path to the market winds past the temple square, which is still littered with faded flower petals from last week's festival. Someone's sweeping and someone else is already arguing over the price of sandals. The market itself is a glorious, dusty mess. Stalls made of rope and reed line the paths like a maze built by distracted gods. Every few feet someone waves a basket or shouts about the purity of their lentils. A woman balances a tray of smoked fish on her head. A boy is trying to juggle dates. He drops them. No one helps. You find your usual trading spot, half a woven mat near the wall in the shade. If you're lucky, you're not. The sun is already climbing. You unroll the mat, sit cross-legged, and lay out your wares. Your grain bundles sit neatly in front of you, 2 of barley, 1 of lentils. Modest but clean. A few other traders nod in greeting. One grins and mimes chewing a rock. You grin back. He knows your bread. The first customer is an older man with a scar across his nose and a suspicious-looking sack. Trade, he grunts, holding up what looks like 4 onions and a mystery tuber. You shake your head. No roots today. He shrugs and moves on. Your second visitor is a woman selling handmade combs carved from fish bone. Delicate, but your hair hasn't seen a comb since the last eclipse. You pass. Then, just as the heat starts to settle into your spine, a small girl approaches. She's maybe 9, wearing a tunic dyed with something bright and questionably pink. She holds out a pouch and squeaks, "Honeycomb." You blink. She opens the pouch. Real honeycomb. You lean forward. The smell alone makes your mouth water. That golden, sticky, shimmering slab. It's small, but real. You don't even remember the last time you tasted anything sweet, not fruit sweet, not fig paste sweet, but honey. What do you want for it, you ask, trying to keep your voice casual. Barley, she says firmly. Enough to feed 3 people. You open your first pouch. She inspects it like a high priest evaluating a divine omen. She nods. You trade. The honeycomb sits in your palm like treasure. You don't eat it, not yet. This needs a moment. You wrap it carefully in a leaf, tuck it into your tunic, and exhale slowly. Around you the market hums. Historians still argue whether Sumerian markets were centrally organized or spontaneous community events. From where you sit, they're both part ritual, part chaos, all necessity. The sun climbs higher, sweat beads along your temples. Kish appears from nowhere, nose twitching, and flops beside you like a melted goat. You sell the second barley pouch for 2 strips of dried meat. Tough but flavorful. The lentils go to a brewer's wife in exchange for a small jar of fermented mash. It smells awful. You'll probably eat it anyway. By mid-morning, your mat is empty and your basket is full. You have a few slices of meat, the honeycomb, a jar of mash, and a dried fig you found at the bottom of your pouch. You call that a win. You wander the rest of the market with a soft smile, browsing without the burden of bartering. You pass a scribe yelling about discounted curses. You pass a man trying to sell blessed bricks. You pass a stand with small carved animals, mostly goats, of course. Finally, you find the spot, a quiet corner near the river where a few vendors rest in the shade. You sit down, unwrap the leaf, and stare at the honeycomb. Golden, sticky, glowing in the light like captured sunlight. You take a bite. It's everything. Sweet beyond reason, smooth, chewy, almost floral. The wax folds gently under your teeth, the honey spreads across your tongue, and your eyes close involuntarily. You chew slowly, reverently. Kish whines beside you. You give him a fingertip's worth. He licks it up like it's a holy sacrament. For a moment, everything fades, the heat, the dust, the noise. Just you, the honey, and the soft gurgle of the river nearby. When the bite is gone, you don't even mind. It's enough. You lie back on the warm ground basket beside you, Kish curled near your arm and the taste of ancient sweetness lingering on your lips, and you think maybe today was the best day in Sumer yet. The afternoon melts around you like wax on clay. After honey, the world seems softer, less sharp, less gritty. You lie there in the shade by the river bank, eyes half-lidded, stomach not full but not empty, which in Sumer counts as prosperity. Kish is stretched out beside you, twitching occasionally in what must be a dream about meat or mice or maybe dancing barley stalks. Eventually the sun starts its long slide down. You rise slowly, brush off your tunic, and begin the walk back toward your hut, weaving through the thinning crowds of the market. Someone is packing up dried herbs. Another is chasing a runaway goat that does not care for its owner's priorities. You pass a potter arguing with a woman about whether a cracked bowl counts as air-conditioned. You smile and keep walking. When you reach your neighborhood, the shadows have grown long and the air smells faintly of dust, smoke, and roasted onion. You step inside your hut, set your basket down, and begin to unpack your gains: the dried meat, the fig, the mash, and the now empty honey leaf. You press the leaf flat and tuck it away in a corner, not for eating, but for remembering. A token of luxury, a relic of your own personal feast. Dinner tonight is simple: a slice of dried meat softened in warm water mixed with barley and a bit of the mash. You heat it over the hearth, letting the flames lick the sides of the pot. The smell is smoky and sharp, the texture chewy but manageable. You eat slowly, chewing each bite like it owes you something. Outside, the neighbors are settling into their routines. The flute boy starts his evening performance, mercifully slightly in tune this time. A woman 2 huts over is reciting a story about a priest who tried to ride a donkey backward into the temple and was struck down by a falling roof tile. You've heard it before, but it's still funny. After you eat, you set out a small offering near the doorway, just a pinch of barley and a sliver of meat wrapped in a reed leaf. Not because you're devout, but because the rats are, and sometimes it's wise to appease the smaller gods too. You sit by the doorway with Kish, watching the stars emerge one by one like shy children creeping into view. The moon rises pale and slow, casting a soft silver sheen over the rooftops. That's when the messenger comes. A boy maybe 12 wearing the temple's gray sash. He walks slowly barefoot, a tablet tucked under one arm. He stops in front of you. You're summoned. You blink. Me? He nods. Tomorrow, temple kitchen. You sigh. Not because you're unhappy, but because temple kitchen duty is complicated. There are perks, access to ingredients, warmth, even occasional leftovers. But there are also risks. Priests who complain about the stew's texture, sudden fasting proclamations that arrive mid-boil, and the constant fear of dropping something sacred into the ash pit. You thank the boy, take the tablet, and read the scratched symbols. Sure enough, your name, tomorrow's date, kitchen emblem, and the double-line mark meaning don't be late. You lean back and look at the stars. Tomorrow might be better, or worse. Probably both. You sleep. Morning comes quickly, as it always does in Sumer. There's no curtain, no snooze button. Just the soft whisper of wind through reeds and the distant murmur of temple chants. You wash your face with cool water, throw on your least offensive tunic, and set out toward the temple complex, the tablet tucked under your arm. The kitchen is already alive when you arrive. Huge clay ovens radiate heat. Smoke curls into the sky. Pots the size of bathtubs bubble with stew mash or things you don't ask about. You're greeted by an older woman with arms like bread paddles and a permanent scowl. You're the new one, she says. You stir. You fetch. You don't taste anything unless told. You nod. She hands you a massive ladle and points to a pot. You stir. It's barley, lentils, onion, and judging by the scent, some kind of dried fish. The aroma is rich, earthy, almost pleasant. You try not to imagine how much of it will stick to your arms for the next 2 days. Hours pass. You stir, chop, rinse, grind. You slice dates, peel onions, sort dried herbs by scent. You learn that mint makes the priests sneeze, that if the stew sticks to the bottom, you scrape it, that someone once dropped a reed sandal into a pot and it was blessed as an omen of grounding. Historians still argue whether temple kitchens were organized like modern kitchens with stations hierarchy recipes, or more like chaotic alchemy labs with snacks. Today it feels like both. By late afternoon, your arms ache, your eyes sting from onion fumes, and your hands smell like every meal you've ever eaten. But you're offered a reward, a warm bowl of the main stew ladled straight from the clean pot. You take it, sit on the back steps, and eat. It's delicious. Salty, thick, full of spice and depth. You taste fish, garlic, barley, and maybe even coriander. It's real food, temple food. You savor every bite. Then you return your bowl, thank the kitchen master, and make your way home in the glow of a full belly. The city hums with evening life. Children dance in the dust. Someone plays a drum with more enthusiasm than rhythm. A priest argues with a goat that refuses to leave a shrine. You step into your hut, sit down, and sigh. Today you stirred the pot, and for once you got to eat from it too. The temple kitchen leaves its mark. You wake the next morning still smelling faintly of onions, your hands rough with dried grain mash, and a new ache blooming behind your shoulders like a slowly unraveling rope. But your belly is full, and in Sumer that means something close to divine favor. Kish is already awake, sniffing the hearth, hoping last night's scent left some edible trace. You toss him a scrap of flatbread you'd saved from temple rations, thicker, softer than your usual bricks, though already hardening at the corners. You sit for a moment, letting the morning air settle over your skin. The city feels hushed today, as if even the priests are tired of hearing themselves chant. You stretch, wince, and begin your morning ritual, checking the jars. Your lentil jar is nearly empty. The barley one has enough for a small pot of mash. And the third, your surprise jar, contains exactly 2 dried onions, a piece of charcoal, and what appears to be a fossilized fig. You sigh. Today is preservation day, the one day you try to get ahead of spoilage rather than just react to it. You pull out your woven basket of tools, a bent spoon, a hollow reed, 2 bits of rough cloth, and a small gourd of oil gifted by a neighbor who accidentally cooked his sandals and now walks barefoot out of shame. You begin with the jars, cleaning the rims, wiping the sides, sprinkling in a little ash to deter insects. The process is tedious, repetitive, but necessary. You once skipped a week and found yourself staring into a writhing mass of larvae that had claimed your lentils as a homeland. You sprinkle salt around the base of your reed shelves. Not much salt is rare, but just enough to confuse the ants. You hum as you work a low, lazy tune your grandmother used to sing when grinding grain. You don't remember the words, only the rhythm. Then it's time to check your water. You lift the clay lid on your storage jar and lean in. The smell is fine, slightly earthy but not offensive. You scoop a handful. A beetle floats past. You flick it out. Problem solved. Historians still argue whether Sumerians intentionally filtered their water or just got really good at ignoring what was swimming in it. You suspect both. You take a break and sit by the doorway, fanning yourself with a folded palm frond. Across the alley, your neighbor is hanging strips of goat meat from a drying rack. You watch him work, dipping, salting, slicing. He catches your eye and nods. You nod back. He disappears for a moment and returns holding something small wrapped in a leaf. He crosses the alley and offers it. "For your help last moon," he says. "When the rats ate my flour, you unwrap it carefully. Cheese, real cheese. Tangy, soft, and sharp-smelling. You blink. You don't cry, not quite, but it's close. You thank him, wrap it again, and place it gently into your good jar, the one you almost never open. Later you roast a handful of barley with a splash of oil and the last of your onion. It's crisp, slightly burnt, and smells like a festival. You add a crumble of cheese on top. The taste hits your tongue like a song. You chew slowly, reverently. Even Kish seems stunned. When you finish, you lie back on your mat and stare up at the ceiling. A spider is building a web between the rafters. You watch it for a while, slow, methodical, no rush. You feel a strange kinship. The afternoon drifts by. In the distance, the market drums begin again, not the loud ones, but soft, rhythm-heavy, drawing people in for a smaller trade day. You grab your basket just in case and wander that way. This time you're not here to sell, just to browse, to watch. You pass a stand with dyed reeds woven into bracelets. One vendor is selling clay flutes that don't sound entirely terrible. A group of children gathers around a woman telling stories using small carved figurines. She's acting out a myth, something about a hero who traded his shadow for a basket of onions. You stop, you watch, you laugh, because honestly, that's not a bad deal. You stay for a while, listening to her voice rise and fall with the story's rhythm, the crowd leaning in at every turn. Kish curls up beside your feet. You scratch behind his ear absently. Eventually you stand by a single reed bracelet with a smooth green bead and head home as the sun begins to dip. You slip the bracelet over your wrist and admire it. It catches the light just enough to feel decorative, not necessary, not practical. just nice. At your hut you light the hearth and boil a little water for evening mash. You use less barley tonight, you're saving some. Instead you flavor it with salt cheese and a splash of oil. It bubbles thick and rich, filling the hut with a smell that makes you sigh out loud. You eat by the fire, legs crossed, watching the flame flicker across the clay walls. When the bowl is empty, you set it aside and lie down, arms behind your head. The night sounds creepin' frogs by the river, a lute in the distance, someone yelling at a goat. You close your eyes and dream of shadow trades, cheese miracles, and bracelets that glint like stars. You wake in darkness, not because of noise or heat, but because something is missing the breeze. The air is thick, unmoving, heavy like a pot of overboiled mash. You sit up slowly, feeling the sweat already collecting behind your knees. Kish is panting softly, tongue lolling out. He lifts his head to glance at you, then flops it back down. You understand. It's going to be a scorcher. Outside, even the insects are quiet. The city seems to be holding its breath. You rise, wipe the sweat from your brow, and step outside. The sky is still bruised with the colors of early dawn, but already the sun feels like it's waiting just beyond the rooftops, tapping its foot. A group of workers trudges past, heading toward the outer walls with baskets and ropes. Brick repair. Not your task today, thank the gods, but still a reminder that the world moves even when your tunic clings in all the wrong places. You return inside, light a small fire with what little charcoal remains, and set to work boiling water. Breakfast will be quick barley, softened with river herbs, topped with a crumb of yesterday's cheese. Luxury rationing. You eat with slow bites, savoring the salt, the tang, the soft grain. You hear the drum roll around mid-morning. Not market drums, not temple drums. These are fast, sharp, urgent. You step outside and see others already gathering near the square. A crier appears, arms flailing, voice loud enough to crack the quiet. Inspection alert. Surprise grain survey. By order of the High Temple, prepare all personal stores for review. A groan ripples through the street. Another inspection. So soon you duck back into your hut and glance at your jars. Your best one is fine, sealed, tidy, recently topped off. The others, less impressive. One holds mostly ash and hope. Another still smells faintly of spoiled onion. You scramble to rearrange. You combine 2 jars, fluff the grain with a reed scoop to make it look fuller. You move the beetle-bitten lentils to the back and sprinkle a few dried petals over the top. A cosmetic fix. If you squint, it almost looks fresh. Then, to sell the illusion, you wipe your brow and scatter a little barley near the door as if you've just been measuring it out for trade. Authenticity by chaos. Kish watches from the corner, ears alert. He knows the routine by now. By the time the inspectors reach your street, your jars are stacked, your doorway is clean, and you're sitting cross-legged with the calm of someone who definitely doesn't have a moldy fig under the mat. They arrive with a tablet, 2 scribes, and a priest's apprentice who looks about 12 but wears an expression like he's already above all this. You nod politely. One scribe opens a jar, sniffs, stirs, nods. The second taps a spoon against your barley jar. This one's low. You shrug. Festival cooking. Gave some to the temple kitchen. He raises an eyebrow but writes something anyway. The apprentice glances around your hut, spots the empty mash bowl from breakfast, and frowns. You smile sweetly. Finally they leave. You wait a full 5 minutes before exhaling. Historians still argue whether these inspections were about actual food control or just ways to remind citizens who's in charge. You have an opinion. You don't share it. You just sweep the floor and move on. By afternoon, the heat has swallowed the city. You strip down to your undershift and sit in the shade, fanning yourself with a reed mat. Even the birds are silent. Kish lies with his tongue out, eyes closed, living proof that melting is a viable state of being. To distract yourself, you begin a task you've avoided for days, replastering the cracks in your wall. You mix mud with crushed straw, smear it carefully over the sun-baked fissures, smoothing it with a flat shell. It's messy, slow, strangely satisfying. And it distracts you from the heat pressing into your spine. While you work, you hum softly an old tune from market days, a melody about river reeds and love letters scratched into clay. You're not sure where you learned it. You just know it sticks in your chest like a warm stone. As evening approaches, the wind finally returns, soft at first, then steady. The relief is immediate. Kish lifts his head, eyes half-lidded in appreciation. You both lean into it, letting the breeze undo the sweat and frustration of the day. You light the hearth as the light fades, setting a small pot of grain over the coals. You add crushed herbs, a single strip of dried meat, and a few drops of oil saved from temple kitchen days. The smell fills the hut, earthy and rich. You eat slowly, bowl warm in your hands, listening to the chorus of frogs, flutes, and distant footsteps. After dinner, you climb onto your mat, arms behind your head, and stare at the ceiling. Another day survived, and maybe if the wind keeps blowing, sleep will come without the company of mosquitoes. You wake to the unmistakable sound of shouting goats, not one, not two, a full choir, bleating, kicking, throwing themselves against something. You sit up with a start, tangled in your mat, heart still in sleep mode, eyes barely open. Kish lifts his head, looks at you as if to ask, "Did you offend the gods again?" Then flops back down. You stagger outside. The alley is chaos. 3 goats, possibly possessed, are trampling through baskets, knocking over jars, and chasing a boy who has clearly lost control of the situation. Behind them, the priest's assistant flails, tablet in hand, looking both furious and terrified. Your neighbor Enlil steps into the fray, swinging a broom like a warrior. "They ate my last fig," he yells. "Should have paid your barley tax," someone shouts back. You step aside as one of the goats barrels past, dragging a length of broken rope behind it. It stops, looks at you, and without breaking eye contact, relieves itself next to your doorstep. You sigh. Another regular day in Sumer. Eventually, the assistant manages to corral the animals with the help of a younger priest wielding a large reed basket like a lion tamer. The goats are led off, muttering angrily. The alley settles. People return to muttering about breakfast. Kish returns to napping. You wash your face in the water bowl, find a mostly clean tunic, and start your day with inventory again. The surprise inspections have spooked the neighborhood. No one wants to get caught short. You check your stores, half a jar of barley, a handful of lentils, a small ball of dried herb paste, and a single beautifully firm onion. You roll the onion in your hands like it's sacred. You have plans for this onion. After a short breakfast of soaked barley mash and a soft pat on Kish's head, you set off toward the river bank. Not for water, for reeds. You need to repair the mat that Kish shredded last week during a particularly intense dream involving what was, you assume, a mouse army. The river is lower now, the bank thick with sticky mud and buzzing with dragonflies. You roll your tunic up to your knees and wade in barefoot, picking through the softer patches to find the right stalks, firm, green, flexible. A boy nearby is scooping fish into a basket using nothing but a curved piece of pottery and a chant. You admire the technique. You don't ask questions. You gather your reeds and head home dripping and sun-warmed, feeling like you've earned your lunch. Today, you decide will be a cooking day. Not just survival cooking, but real cooking. The kind with layers, with spice, with taste. You chop the onion, finely set it to sizzle in your clay pot with a pinch of oil and dried herbs. The smell is immediate and heavenly. You add barley, a dash of salt, and a sliver of dried fish. You stir slowly, watching it thicken, bubble, soften. When it's ready, you ladle it into your good bowl. Sprinkle crushed herb paste over the top and sit down with your back against the cool mud brick wall. You eat in silence. It's perfect. After lunch, you weave reeds. Your fingers work quickly, muscle memory guiding the motion, under, over, twist, pull. The new mat takes shape, slowly patterned with diagonal lines and small imperfections that make it feel yours. Kish sits beside you, tail thumping occasionally against your foot. He tries to chew a spare reed. You hand him the ugliest one. Later you patch the hole in your thatch roof. The sun is blazing, but your hut is holding steady, its clay walls thick and forgiving. You hum while you work a tune from the river markets. Historians still debate whether daily domestic labor in Sumer was shared communally or strictly divided by gender and status. In practice, it's whoever's not too hungry or too tired to do it. By late afternoon, the air thickens again. A storm is coming. You smell it before you see it. The dusty metallic tang of river wind, the way the light shifts to yellow, the way chickens start acting like prophets. You tie down the reed mat, close the window shutter, and cover your grain jars with clay lids weighted by stones. You sit by the hearth as the first gusts begin to whistle through the alleys. Then the rain hits, hard, sudden, loud. It drums on the roof like a wild musician, pouring through cracks you forgot to seal. You scramble to plug one with a palm frond, another with a rag. One leak drips directly onto your foot. You sigh and move. Kish hides under the bench, tail curled. The storm grows, lightning flashing distantly, thunder rolling slow and low like a priest with indigestion. You sit in the dark, listening, watching water trace paths through the dirt floor. You light a small oil lamp. The flicker makes the walls dance. And then from outside, laughter. You step into the doorway and see children running through the rain, arms flailing, heads tipped back, mouths open. 2 women are dragging mats outside to rinse. A man is standing shirtless under the downpour, eyes closed, face calm. You smile. In a place where water is rarely a gift, this is blessing. You step out, just a little, just enough to let the rain touch your skin. It's cold, clean. It runs down your face, over your shoulders, through your hair. You close your eyes and breathe in. The storm rages on, but tonight at least it's washing everything clean. The storm dies in the early hours before dawn, retreating into distant rumbles as the clouds roll eastward. You wake to the sound of dripping steady rhythmic plinks into the clay water jars you left uncovered. One of them is nearly full, free water. You smile. The hut smells of wet earth and smoldering oil. Kish is snoring under the bench, curled into a tight cinnamon roll of damp fur and triumph. You stretch carefully, noting every muscle that aches from patching the roof during the downpour. Outside, the world is washed. Mud paths gleam under the early morning light, bricks darkened and glossy reeds dripping and swaying gently in the breeze. Everything smells like it's been scrubbed. The usual stench of fish sweat and goat has faded to something earthy, clean, ancient. You step into the street and pause. The neighbor's wall collapsed just a corner, but it's enough to let his chickens roam freely. They're having the time of their lives, pecking at wet grain and flapping their wings with chaotic joy. Enlil, standing ankle-deep in muck, yells at them half-heartedly while trying to restack bricks. You offer a nod. He raises a soggy hand in return. The temple square is already abuzz. Rain brings both damage and blessings, and both require paperwork. Scribes with clay tablets and damp scrolls bark instructions, while apprentices sweep water from sacred spaces. You skirt around them, heading to the river, not for reeds today, but for clay. The rain has softened the banks, revealing thick globs of reddish-brown clay, perfect for patching molding, or even if you're feeling ambitious, making a pot. You gather a bundle in your arms, slopping it into a woven sling, and trek home. The weight pulls at your back. You feel every step, but there's something comforting about it, like you're carrying part of the city itself. At your hut, you kneel on the damp floor and begin kneading the clay. It's sticky, stubborn, but full of promise. You work slowly, shaping it into a small round bowl with thick walls. It's uneven. One side bulges, but it stands. You smooth the surface with a damp reed, carve a few dots along the rim. Nothing fancy, just yours. You set it near the hearth to dry and sit back satisfied. The rest of the morning is spent sorting wet herbs, damp firewood, soggy baskets. You set things out to dry, prop open the mat door, and hang strips of cloth over a pole. Kish watches, yawning grandly, before returning to his ongoing meditation on the life of a floor rug. You decide to make lunch a little special. With the storm water, you wash your last good onion, slice it thin, and stew it with lentils, garlic, and leftover dried meat. You add crushed reed shoots and a pinch of spice you traded for last moon. The pot bubbles with purpose. The smell draws Enlil, of course. He passes by, pauses, leans casually into the doorway. That smell divine, or am I just starving? You glance at the pot, then at him. Little of both. He grins. You trade for a bowl, you think. Got any dried dates? He nods, pats a pouch on his hip. 3. You hand him a bowl. He sits on the step and eats like a man rescued from exile. You get 1 date in return, soft, rich, sticky as honey. Worth it. After he leaves, you finish your meal slowly, enjoying each bite, licking the broth from your fingers. You wash up, tend the fire, and check your drying pot. It's already cracking at the edges. Too fast, too wet. You sigh and begin smoothing it again, whispering curses that would make a priest faint. Outside the wind picks up, and with it dust. The storm giveth, the dust taketh away. You scramble to cover your drying herbs, drag the mat door closed, and dampen the hearth. The air thickens. Grit finds its way into your nose, your eyes, your thoughts. For half an hour the city disappears behind a curtain of sand and wind. Then silence. You peek out. The dust has settled. The ground is dry again. The shine is gone. You sweep the floor again. You rinse your hands again. You sigh again. But then something catches your eye. Outside your door, in the small puddle that remains from the rain, a single lotus flower floats white, perfect, out of place. You don't know where it came from. You don't ask. You pick it up, gently turn it in your hands. The petals are soft, unbruised. You place it in a shallow bowl near your sleeping mat and sit beside it, letting its stillness quiet the dust in your head. As evening falls, the city breathes again. Someone starts a song. Someone else burns incense that smells like pepper and wet bark. You lie down, Kish beside you, the lotus glowing faintly in the lamplight. You close your eyes, and sleep comes like the storm's sudden total cleansing. The next morning greets you not with goats, nor with drums, nor with the warm smell of barley baking in a neighbor's oven. No, today begins with a quiet so strange it makes you sit up straight. Even Kish lifts his head in confused agreement. You rise slowly, eyes adjusting to the pale gold light slipping through the reed shutter. The lotus flower in its bowl is still floating miraculously intact. You splash your face with water, take a deep breath, and step outside. The city is waiting. There's motion, yes, people brushing thresholds, folding mats, feeding chickens. But it's slower, softer, like everyone feels something is about to happen. And then you hear it, the distant sound of hoofbeats. You turn toward the southern gate. A trail of dust rises beyond the far wall. A small procession emerges, messengers, not from the temple. These wear different robes with high crests and sharp blue sashes. Travelers from another city. You duck back into your hut and wipe your face again. Important visitors mean announcements, and announcements often mean changes. Food laws, trade rules, new taxes on your favorite onions. Or worse, new priestly decrees about how many rats count as a divine punishment. A neighbor calls out, "Assembly Temple Square." You grab your outer tunic, sling your water pouch over your shoulder, and follow the stream of people toward the center of the city. The ziggurat rises high and solid against the sky, its baked bricks glowing warm in the early sun. In the square a raised platform has been set. Two messengers stand beside the high priest, both looking far too clean for this hour. The crowd gathers, murmuring. The priest lifts a hand. "People of the city," he begins, voice surprisingly strong, "we bring news from the north." The crowd leans in. A great market has been opened at the river crossing near Lagash. All Sumerian cities are invited to trade. All craftsmen, potters, weavers, and brewers may travel to offer their goods. Gasps ripple through the square, an open market with outsiders. You blink. This is rare. Usually trade stays close between nearby villages through known temples, but this is regional. The priest continues. In 7 days a caravan will leave. Those wishing to join must register. Only those with official seals may trade. Now there's a stir. People start whispering. Seals are status. Seals mean paperwork. Seals mean bribes or favors. You stand quietly, mind racing. You're not a priest, not a scribe, not a registered potter or licensed brewer. Your barley mush won't make it past the first checkpoint. But still, the idea lingers. What if you went? What if you saw other cities? What if somewhere out there they have different kinds of cheese? The crowd begins to break up. Some run toward the scribes to ask about registration. Others retreat to their homes to think. You head home slowly, thoughts spinning like a potter's wheel. At your hut you sit by the hearth and stare at the clay bowl you made, the one that cracked during the rain. You pick it up, still rough but solid. You set it down beside your small jar of glaze powder, then glance toward your grain jar. A thought grows. You could make a batch of painted bowls. Simple. Functional, maybe even pretty if you remember to keep the glaze from bubbling. You could trade them, or at least offer them, just enough to earn a seal, just enough to travel. You eat a small lunch flatbread dipped in onion mash and immediately begin mixing clay. The next few days blur. You wake early, collect river clay, knead it, shape it. You form bowls, plates, small pots. You let them dry, scrape them smooth paint lines and dots with a reed stick, dipped in pigment you made from crushed flour dust and charcoal. Neighbors pass by and offer comments. Too shallow. Nice rim, what is it for? You shrug, eating or not eating, just looking. One woman picks up a finished pot and runs her thumb along the glaze. You going to the market? You hesitate, then nod, trying. She smiles. Take this with you. She presses something into your hand, a tiny carved stone in the shape of a fish. For trade, she shakes her head. For luck. By the 6th day you have 8 pieces, not flawless, but whole, painted, glazed. You wrap them in straw, place them in a reed basket, and tuck Kish's mat beside it. He's coming too, obviously. That night you sit beside the hearth eating your last onion stew and watching the flicker of firelight on your clay creations. They seem to glow a little. Or maybe that's just your exhaustion. The lotus still floats in its bowl, a little smaller now, a little paler. You lie back, Kish curled beside you, and whisper to the dark, let them trade. The morning of departure comes like a quiet knock at the door, not loud, not urgent, but impossible to ignore. You rise before the sun, the world still cloaked in blue-gray shadows. Outside, the city holds its breath. The caravan gathers. Kish senses the shift. He circles your feet, alert ears, perked tail straight. You pack slowly, carefully, reed basket with 8 clay bowls wrapped in straw, a pouch of dried mash, half a fig for luck, and the fish amulet, the one the neighbor gave you. It goes in your pocket. You step outside into the cool, pre-dawn air. Down the street, torches flicker beside the main gate. You can already hear murmurs, the groan of ox carts, the creak of wheels. The caravan is real. It's waiting. You tighten the sling across your shoulder, call softly to Kish, and begin walking. The gathering point near the southern gate is already bustling. Around you others load goods onto carts, stacks of linen, jugs of oil, bundles of dried reeds, coils of rope jars sealed in wax. You spot Enlil arguing with a potter over a cart space. He sees you, waves a hand, then drops a sack of onions on his own foot. A temple scribe moves through the crowd, checking seals and names. He reaches you and pauses. Name you give it. Registered trade. You hold up your basket. He eyes the clay bowls. Pulls one free, turns it over in his hand. Yours, you nod. He squints at the glaze. Then, almost grudgingly, he reaches into a pouch and hands you a small disc, a traveler's seal marked with the sigil of the Southern Temple. You trade in Lagash only, he says. No northern cities, no blessing, no curse, just this. You nod again. Your fingers close around the disc like it's a sun-warmed stone. Kish barks softly as if to say, get moving. You find a spot near the rear of the caravan beside a weaver and a dried fruit merchant who smells like syrup and sun. The oxen grunt, the drivers yell, the wheels lurch forward. You're moving, leaving the city. The mud-brick walls, the smoke-stained rooftops, the fish sellers, the priests, the boy with the terrible flute, you leave it all behind. And ahead lies open road, slow rolling hills, reed marshes, and a sky bigger than you remember it being. The first day is long and quiet. Dust clings to everything. Your feet ache, your tunic sticks. You walk beside the cart, sometimes beside the merchant, sometimes ahead. Kish trots just behind the wheels, nose always twitching. You pass small settlements, clusters of huts, roadside shrines, once a burned-out granary. At midday you stop under a bent fig tree and share food with your neighbors. Your bowls catch someone's eye, a young girl with clever fingers and a trader's squint. She points to the one with a swirl along the rim. How much you blink. What do you have? She offers a strip of cured lamb, done, trade complete. At night the caravan circles up near a river bend. Fires crackle and 100 voices hum in different directions stories. Songs, snores, prayers. You heat a small meal, share it with Kish, then curl into your mat beneath the stars. It's quieter out here, no priests, no drums, just the wind in the reeds and the soft lap of water nearby. The second day is harder. Your sandals crack, the sun doesn't blink, a cart breaks a wheel and the shouting lasts an hour. Kish bites into a cactus out of curiosity and regrets everything. You help pull his tongue free. The road narrows between two hills. Everyone walks closer. The weaver beside you tells a story about a ghost that trades shadows for dates. You laugh, then wonder if it's true. That evening you sell another bowl, this time to a scribe from the northern edge of Nippur. He pays in salt, actual salt, white, flaky, real. You hold the pouch like treasure. By the third day the road levels. You see signs of the city ahead, flags fluttering in the breeze, low walls rising from the dust smoke rising in steady streams. Lagash, you've never been. But you know the stories. Larger markets, new foods, better clay, scribes who don't hate laughter, and traders who deal in things your city's never even seen. The caravan slows, guards check seals. Yours passes inspection with barely a glance. You enter. Stalls sprawl across the horizon, bursting with color-bright fabrics, shining metals, heaping mounds of spices. There are scents here you've never smelled before, sweet, sharp, heavy with oil and heat. You find a spot near a fountain, yes, a real fountain, and lay out your wares. The bowls glint in the afternoon sun. You sit cross-legged, Kish at your side, and wait. And within minutes, someone approaches. She's older, wrapped in blue silk, carrying a staff tipped with copper. She picks up one bowl, taps the rim, runs her finger along the glaze. "Yours?" she asks. You nod. She studies you, then smiles. "You've come far." You don't answer. You just breathe. She buys 2 bowls for a wedge of goat cheese and a spool of dyed thread. Kish barks in approval. You sit a little taller, you've made it. And for the first time perhaps ever you begin to wonder what else might you do. By the 4th day in Lagash you know the rhythm of the market like you know the shape of your own hands. It begins before dawn, merchants arranging wares by starlight, scribes rubbing sleep from their eyes as they count tablets and measure weights. The sound of carts creaking, pots clinking, the occasional yelp as someone steps on a goat tail in the dark. You arrive early, your reed mat laid beside the same public fountain. A good spot, there's shade by midday, and the steady trickle of water draws customers like honey draws ants. Your remaining bowls, 5 now, are arranged in a half-circle straw cushioning their bases. The glaze catches the morning light, and a few children pause to look at them wide-eyed. You trade a 4th bowl before the sun even crests the walls of the city. This one goes to a dyer, a wiry woman whose arms are stained purple to the elbow. She admires the texture of the clay, mutters something about symmetry, and gives you a strip of woven cloth, soft, smooth, dyed with crushed berries into a deep violet hue. "Wrap something special in this," she says, then moves on without waiting for thanks. You sit for a long while after that, running your fingers along the fabric. It's the nicest thing you've ever owned. Later you trade a 5th bowl to a man selling dates stuffed with nuts and dipped in honey. You hesitate 1 bowl for food, but 1 bite convinces you. The flavor floods your mouth, sweet, crunchy, soft, sticky, unreal. You eat it slowly, watching others pass by with bundles of fish garlands of garlic, pots of rosewater. You can't afford those yet, but you're here, and they're here. And that's something. That evening the market dims. Torches are lit. Musicians set up near the fountain, flutes, drums a harp that sings like a reed in wind. You sit with Kish at your side, watching the performance, chewing a bit of roasted lentil cake shared by a weaver who admired your sandals you offered to trade. She refused, said she just liked your dog. And then, as if conjured, a scribe appears. Not like the temple boys back home with their smug sandals and constant sneezing. This one wears robes of deep rust, trimmed in ivory thread. He approaches, quietly kneels beside your display, and studies your two remaining bowls. He says nothing for a long while. Finally, you fire these yourself. You nod. He runs a finger around the rim of one. The curve here, it's not perfect. Your stomach drops, but it feels perfect. You blink. He straightens, reaches into a pouch and pulls out a small clay cylinder, a sealed token marked with the crest of Lagash's artisan registry. "Do you want to stay?" he asks. "I know a potter who trains apprentices. He has a kiln, a real one, with shelves." Your mind reels. "Stay in Lagash." You look down at Kish. He's busy licking lentil crumbs from the mat, unbothered, probably imagining how city goats might taste compared to the ones back home. You clear your throat. "I thought this was a trip," you say. "A trade run." He smiles. "Everything's a trade run, until it's not." He leaves the token with you and vanishes into the crowd. You sit there in the flickering light of oil lamps, your heart pounding quietly in your chest, and stare at the little cylinder. It's heavier than it looks. That night, back at the traveler's quarters, you unroll the violet cloth and gently wrap it around the token. You place it beside your bowl of water. You eat the last of your lentils. You pet Kish's ear. You try to sleep. You don't, not right away. Your mind churns. You think of the city, of clay that doesn't crack in the rain, of kilns that bake even, of real glazes, of bowls that shine, of making something not just useful but beautiful. You think of staying. In the morning you're up before the sun. You carry the token wrapped in violet tucked into your tunic. You walk the quiet streets of Lagash Kish, padding beside you to the potter's quarter. The smell hits you first, smoke, earth, and something sharp like heated metal. Then you see it, a real kiln, half buried in the ground, glowing faintly orange. And beside it a man with arms like clay pots, humming to himself as he stirs a vat of slip. He sees you, nods. "You're the reed glaze kid?" he asks. You nod. "Show me your hands," he says. You hold them out. He squints. "Good," you don't flinch. Then he points to a pile of raw clay. "Start there." You drop your pouch whistle softly to Kish to settle nearby and roll up your sleeves. And without thinking, without doubting, without glancing back, you begin. Clay under your fingernails, clay in the creases of your palms, clay behind your ears somehow. You lose track of the days by the number of pots you shape, crack, patch, fire, and fail. Lagash teaches fast and it teaches hard. The potter, his name is Gibble. Like the fire god, doesn't waste time with praise or soft words. He watches your hands more than your face. He never tells you good job, but he nods once when a bowl comes out smooth and level, and that nod feels better than honey. You learn to wedge clay until your shoulders burn. You learn to center it on the wheel. Yes, a real wheel spinning like a minor miracle until your fingers ache. You learn the exact moment when a bowl is too thin, when a handle will collapse, when a lip will warp. You learn that kilns are moody and ash sticks to everything. You also learn that Kish absolutely despises the wheel and hides under the workbench whenever it spins, but he stays every day, napping in the sun by the door, barking only when someone knocks. You trade your last bow, your favorite one, for a small tool set, carving sticks, a smoothing stone, a brush made from goat hair. It feels like a ceremony. Gibble watches you sort through them, says nothing, just flicks water from a jar onto a lump of fresh clay and says, "Try again." So you do. Each day your hands move with more confidence. You shape bowls with thicker bases, carve edges that don't crack. You start adding details, lines, dots, swirls, not for function but for joy. Your meals are simple lentils, flatbread, sometimes fruit if Gibble's wife is feeling generous. You eat on the kiln steps, Kish at your side, your skin dusted with dried slip. Some nights you stay late to watch the kiln glow. There's a magic to it, how earth becomes stone, how soft becomes strong, how time burns its name into every curve. One morning, Gibble gestures to a corner shelf. "Pick one," he says. You look. The shelf is full of your latest pieces, all fired, all whole. You choose one, a small round bowl, deep blue glaze with a carved band of reeds along the rim. "Keep it," he says. "That one's you." You turn it over in your hands. It's not perfect, but it's yours. Then comes the envoy. You're in the middle of shaping a jar when a stranger appears at the workshop door, robes of white and copper, a seal dangling from his neck. He introduces himself as Turson from the temple administration of Lagash. His words are careful, deliberate. There's a position, he says. A temple needs a new ceramics specialist, someone to repair ritual vessels, someone with a clean hand and a quiet tongue. He looks at you. You blink. Turson nods. "I'm not a priest." "You're not meant to be. You're meant to be steady." He leaves a tablet with the offer. Pay is modest but steady. Meals included. A sealed post. Status. And a spot in the city records. You sit with the tablet in your lap that night, the firelight flickering across the etched lines. You think of home mud streets, barley mash chasing rats from grain jars. You think of Lagash markets, kiln stories by the fountain bowls that shine in the morning light. You think of choice. You wake the next morning before dawn and find Gibble already tending the fire. You hand him the tablet. He reads it, expression unreadable. Then he grunts. "If you go clean the wheel first," you do. Then you gather your things, your carving tools, the blue bowl, the fish amulet, the violet cloth. Kish watches with his head tilted. "We're not going far," you tell him, "just a little more official." He sneezes once. You take it as approval. The temple of Lagash is grand, vaulted ceilings, walls painted with spirals, and beast's air thick with incense. Your new workshop is quiet, lined with shelves of cracked relics and half-mended jars. You are to restore what others broke, make new what time has worn. It's not glamorous, but the clay is good, and the kiln is steady. You spend your mornings in silence, your afternoons among the pots, and your evenings walking the city with Kish. Sometimes you pass the market and catch sight of your old basket mat, now used as a rug beneath a date seller's stall. You don't mind. At night you sleep beside the blue bowl, the lotus now dry but still whole tucked inside. Historians may never record your name. They may never know the shape of your hands or the weight of your days. But in some temple archive etched into a ledger in pale clay, there will be a line, repairer of vessels, artisan of barley glaze, resident of Lagash, and that is enough. Weeks pass. Your hands forget what it was like to not smell of clay. Your arms grow stronger, your movements slower, more deliberate. You sleep deeply now, the kind of sleep that comes after shaping earth into permanence. Kish has claimed the corner beside your workbench, curled into a little hollow dug into the clay floor. He keeps the workshop mouse-free and morale surprisingly high. The temple gives you structure and you learn its rhythms. Mornings are quiet, filled with small repairs, chipped oil lamps, cracked offering trays, figurines with broken feet or missing noses. In the afternoons, you're sometimes called into the main sanctuary to retrieve something, an incense burner scorched from years of use or a ceremonial bowl dropped during an overly dramatic blessing. You never ask how it broke. You just fix it. At night, the temple quiets. You sit beneath the high windows, glazing new pieces by oil lamplight, often with Kish beside you, snoring so softly it sounds like waves against the shore. You carve lines into the sides of bowls, not as decoration really, but like you're writing stories into them. One curve for the long walk to Lagash, one loop for the bowl you made by the kiln, a small dot for the honeycomb. You even begin to experiment. New shapes. A shallow dish with a rim that flares like a flower. A jar with a swirl of thumbprint textures that feel like wind. A cup so small it could only hold the first sip of something rare. You fire them in the side kiln and leave them in the back of the shelf. No one has to see them. Yet. One day a high priest enters your workshop holding a very old vessel, tall, thin, painted with faded symbols. It's cracked nearly in two. This, he says, was once used for pouring ceremonial water during equinox rites. Can it be restored? You turn the pot slowly in your hands. The crack runs deep like a lightning strike down its spine, but it's dry, stable, not recent. It can, you say. Will it hold water? You nod. It will. The priest studies your face, then the pot, then leaves without another word. You take your time with it. A full day just to clean the edges, another to align the break, a third to create a slip that won't alter the painted symbols. It becomes your silent companion sitting beside you like a guest from another age. You talk to it without realizing. Kish barks once at you during this process, possibly offended that you've made a new friend. When it's finished, you present it to the temple steward. He turns it over, traces the line where the break once was, and makes the smallest sound of approval, a hum, more breath than voice. You have steady hands, he says. I have dropped many things, you reply. That makes him smile. Not long after you receive your first official commission. A visiting merchant from Umma wants a set of drinking cups for his caravan, each one with a different carved symbol. Something to give his guards. A gift of honor. He offers silver. You nearly laugh. But you take the order. You craft the cups by moonlight, each with a new design, a goat, a river fish, a flame, a barley stalk. The fifth cup you carve with a dog. The merchant doesn't question it. He pays well. You save half the silver. With the rest you buy better glazed real linen for Kish's sleeping mat and a fig cake that makes you nearly weep. One morning a girl appears in your doorway. Not temple staff, not a messenger. She's maybe 12, barefoot, holding a small bowl cracked across the middle. My brother made this, she says. Can you fix it? You take it gently. The clay is coarse, unglazed. It looks like it was pinched into shape by someone learning, someone impatient. But there's care in it. Maybe even love, you say. She returns the next day to retrieve it. You hand it over clean, sealed, mended. She stares at it, then at you. How much nothing you say. She nods once seriously and walks away. You find the bowl sitting on your step the next morning, filled with nuts and 3 raisins. By the time your name appears on a new line in the temple records, ceramics specialist confirmed, You've already begun training a boy who shows up every other day with questions and a pouch full of badly formed pots. You teach him slowly. The first lesson isn't how to shape the rim. It's how to wait, how to breathe before touching the wheel, how to feel the clay move between your palms. One evening you and Kish walk the outer wall as the sky fades to gold. You look down at the city, the rows of rooftops, the lazy smoke of the evening cook fires, the temple rising in the center like an ancient promise. You think of the reed mat you used to sleep on, the barley beer, the child with the snail. You think of the cracked pot that brought you here, and you think, what else is possible? The season shifts. You feel it first in the mornings when the air clings to your skin with a touch of cool instead of heat. The sky turns clearer, more brilliant, the colors sharper, as if someone washed the dust from the sun. In the workshop, your clay dries just a little slower. The kilns fire cleaner. The air smells less of sweat and more of sweet smoke from dried herb bundles hung to dry above the door. Kish grows lazier with the cooling days. He follows you in the mornings to the courtyard, tail swaying, then spends the rest of the day stretched like a half-melted rug in whatever patch of sun he can claim. The temple guards bring him scraps sometimes. One apprentice even made him a collar out of dyed thread and a single bell. He hates it. You keep it anyway. You've built a rhythm in Lagash. Each week you fire 5 to 10 pieces, mostly repairs temple vessels, ritual lamps, incense cups, but also a growing number of new orders. People from the artisan quarter, the market, even other temples bring you commissions now. One woman wanted a set of spice jars each with a symbol for its contents, a sun for heat, a crescent moon for sleep, a spiral for whatever this one is. Your favorite commission came from a young scribe who asked for a water cup shaped like a cloud, trying to remember what it feels like to rain. You made a lumpy blue bowl that dripped when overfilled. He loved it. Your hands are steady now, instinctive. Your shoulders are stronger, your speech more confident. You catch yourself sometimes teaching someone else how to press a thumb just so into the base of a bowl. The words come without thought. You're part of Lagash now, not a visitor, not a traveler. One evening a message arrives, a clay tablet sealed in twine from your old neighbor, Enlil. It's written in his crooked hand, assisted by a much better scribe. He writes of the alley, the goats, the roof that collapsed again, still blaming spirits, and a brief mention that someone recently tried to trade beetles for lentils, and it almost worked. He asks how you are. He says people still talk about the person who fixed a pot so well it outlasted the owner. He ends with a simple sentence. It's not the same without your dog barking at my sandals. You laugh, then you go quiet. Because for the first time in a long time you feel it, that strange twinge in your chest. A little homesick. Not for the place, but for who you were there. You write back. A short note. I'll visit when I can. Tell the goats I haven't forgotten. You send it with a merchant heading west. The next morning you open the side kiln to check your latest batch. Inside 7 bowls, 3 cups and 1 small water jug, your favorite. Carved reeds curled glaze a lip that pours like a whisper. You set them on the shelf. The jug you wrap carefully in violet cloth, the same piece you traded for in your earliest days here. And then you sit, at the center of your workshop beside Kish, with your hands resting on your knees, clay still dusting your fingers, and you let it all arrive, the heat, the effort, the noise, the quiet, the long road from mud to mastery. Historians may never write of you. Your name may fade with the next flood, your bowls may shatter, your kiln cool forever. But tonight, under the rising moon, in the soft hush of a city still breathing, you have made something. You have become something. And for now that is enough. And now, as the fires of Lagash dim and the city slips into the hush of twilight, you find yourself sitting once more by the hearth. The clay has cooled, the tools are cleaned. Kish is curled beside you, chest rising and falling in that steady rhythm only dogs and old friends manage. Outside, the stars have taken their places, quiet sentinels above brick and river. A breeze stirs the violet cloth on your shelf, and the faint scent of dried herbs drifts in through the window. You sip warm barley water, the cup fitting your hand just so. In the distance you hear the low murmur of chants from the ziggurat, soft as breath. They don't call you. Not anymore. But their echoes feel familiar, like waves smoothing a shoreline you've long walked away from. Your bones ache in the good way, the way that says you worked today, that you mattered today, that maybe tomorrow someone will lift a cup you shaped and think this is just right. You lie down, the clay cool beneath your fingers, the sky heavy with silence. Let it hold you, let it all fall away now. The kilns glow, the laughter from the fountain, the taste of honey on cracked bread. Let it all drift like reed boats on the river slipping into sleep. Because you've done enough. You've walked far enough. You've shaped the day with your hands, and now you can rest.